Good evening, everybody, and everyone who's listening to this video for the Grief Support Group, which is a bi-monthly activity, and we try to get together every second Monday. Hi, I'm Karin, and I decided to start this group, actually just a grief support page with some bi-monthly free group support sessions. And as you will see on the page, there is quite a bit of information that you can help yourself with to understand what this is all about. But it boils down to simply being support for free for you and for your friends and or colleagues and anyone who has actually suffered through grief specifically and also trauma. We want to focus these free sessions on grief support because of the great need that has come about through the coronavirus and the consequences of it on family life. And hardly a family on this earth has not been touched in some way, whether directly in the home or very close family or colleagues. And what I'd like to do tonight is just remind everybody that when there are grief support sessions, it is for a group, it is bi-monthly, yes, and it is free. It is not an individual counseling session, but you are most welcome to book a personal private counseling session, whether for trauma work or for grief counseling. There's more information on the page itself under the services tab, and you can just send me an email with your questions or your issue, and whether you have a trauma or a grief counseling session, there is a free assessment session that we do first, so that you can decide if the facilitation that will continue in terms of your process is for you, is what you are happy with, is what fits you. Now, to get back to tonight, what I'd like to share with us is some helpful comments to use when you are in a position where you have to support someone who has suffered a major loss, someone who is grieving, someone who perhaps is in a state of shock. Something happened last week, they were not at work with you, but now they've returned and you can see that they are really battling to get through the day. It could be for any reason whatsoever, but we want to specifically touch on or focus on grief and grief support. And for that purpose, I want to share with you from my grief support book, which is freely available for you as a support for anyone who joins these sessions or has a need to come together with a group, whether you want to just be with other people who understand how you feel and listen, just listen, because sometimes listening allows you to also absorb a sense of resolution, and it doesn't mean that you have to share anything. And of course, if you want to, you are also welcome to share what you've been through, or to ask those difficult questions that just don't seem to get asked when you're in the space you are with other people or family who are also grieving with you, who find it very difficult to talk about it, or you're at work, back at work, and you just feel you can't concentrate properly, you can't sleep properly because you have questions that you just don't find answers for. Then you belong here, and you're welcome to come and to answer to ask your questions, and I will be answering them as far as I can, as far as possible. But the purpose of this group and the online sessions is for you to find a place of comfort and a place where you are received and just as you are, no matter what it is that you are experiencing or feeling or struggling with in terms of your grief. So what I'd like to do is tonight just remind you that we don't record sessions in a group. And everybody's privacy is protected in that way. I don't share the group live either. You will notice on the page that there are 2 videos that I've recorded with information, and I've shared that with you on the page. And then tonight is a decision that I made to actually share this event live, and I'll also be recording it, and I'll be sharing the recording later on. But when we are in a group together, then there won't be any recording, so your privacy is completely respected. What I'm going to do is just refer you to the book on grief support that I've put together as a free support material for you. And for anyone who you know is going through a difficult time and you'd like to share this book with them, then please download it. It's a PDF, it's free, and it covers some major topics. You're welcome to then share it with anyone else. I would love for you to let me know that you've actually shared it with someone, and perhaps they've given you feedback and it has meant something to them. I would love to hear that. It would be great to get some feedback on that. But other than that, what I'd like to do tonight is just go to one specific topic, which are the helpful comments, and just share some of that with you. And I'm literally going to share it from the book, and I have it here on the screen if you'll give me a moment to just get it open clearly. And you know what we do? What do we do when we care for someone, and we want to just really not necessarily help them, but just support them in a way that makes sense? If I have not been through major loss or trauma, what would I rely on? What would I say to a colleague or a friend? Sometimes it's even difficult to know what to say to a family member. If I haven't been through this deep and dark kind of pain, then what I would do is rely on what I've heard people say. And sometimes people reach 30 and 40 years of age before they've even experienced one major loss in life. I've met people who are in their 50s and really have not lost a sibling, a good friend, an aunt or uncle, or their parents, and they really have not yet touched the painful part of life where it feels as if the carpet really has been pulled out under you, and you realize the fragility of us, the fragility of humanness, and how we just are so very frail, and that life can end in a split second. It is possible that you might be listening tonight and that you've really never been in a position where you can have empathy and respond as a supporter to someone in grief. So I hope this will be helpful if that is you, and either way, even if you do know what it's all about, it helps to understand that sometimes there are things that we shouldn't say. There are things that we should avoid saying because it really actually doesn't help the person, or it could even make them feel worse. So let's go. Here we are. One of the first things that we can say are, if you are willing, you might even offer a shoulder, even in your lunchtime or some private time, maybe after work or over the weekend. All you need to say to someone is, with sincerity, if you mean it and you are willing to be a shoulder for someone else, then just simply say to them, without even asking, about the details that has happened. The details are not so important right now. The immense burden of grief is very important. And if someone is comforted, they get to a point where they feel they might want to speak about it, which is also not necessary, but feeling supported is necessary, and that helps us get through a day, a night, another weekend filled with responsibilities. And it helps us so that our functionality is not so impaired by our grief. What I'd like to read for you is a few of these comments. You could say, I am here for you. You are not alone in this. And that's it. Just mean what you say. I will do my best to understand and support you. I will listen without judgment or advice when you need to talk about your feelings. When you are ready to talk, I will not judge you. Remember, a person might be feeling extremely angry about what has happened to them. And sometimes it's easy for people who don't understand what it means to have that kind of a loss that they are experiencing to just be judgmental. Sometimes not intentionally, but to start a sentence with, you know what, you shouldn't feel that way, or you shouldn't worry so much about this or that. That doesn't help the person, because it takes a lot to come out of your shell and be very honest about your feelings. And feelings that are very intense might also be temporary. And usually they are temporary. And what you need to do is get through them, not to hide them. So you could say, tell me what practical things you need help with in this time. Yeah, a mom might need you to just help her get her kids to school, or help her get them picked up. She might have lost her husband, and she might need someone who can help one of her kids with a maths problem. That's all. Just once for an hour. Think practically when you want to support someone. If you're in a position to help someone financially, please do. Sometimes we are, sometimes we're not. If you can even just help a family out where there is death in the family, and you can say, you know what, I'm going to pick up some groceries for you after work. They can always refund you. What is really urgent? What do you need? The wheels come off when there's death in a home. Sometimes you just cannot stick to the routine, and if there are children and routine is so necessary, people need to get to school and to work on time, and the wheels just need to keep turning, and the deeper one goes into grief, the more difficult it is. And if there's someone to just help, just for a few days, maybe just one day a week, or on a bad day, if you can be that kind of support, I'm sure what you sow, you will also reap. Not all of us are made to help someone practically or to engage in this way. So don't put yourself on a guilt trip, but just for the purpose of perspective, I want to mention all of these things. Something else you can say practically is, can I help look after or arrange for help to look after your kids when you need a break? maybe just for a Saturday afternoon, maybe just for a Sunday morning. Maybe a dad has lost his wife and he really just needs some alone time or extra sleep because he's lying awake at night and he's just so heartbroken that he's not getting that sleep that he needs. Sometimes it's about just being willing, even if you're not a close family friend, just being willing to say, you know what, I really want to just help you practically. Within a while you're going to be okay enough to just move on, but for now, let me know what you need. You could say, you are going through a very difficult time and you don't have to feel guilty about your emotions. Especially when you can see someone is really struggling with guilt. You could ask, are you struggling with guilty feelings? You need not feel guilty for feeling a sense of relief, especially in terms of terminal illness, when someone has died after a battle with cancer and the treatment for that has not been successful. Family members or the person maybe who took most responsibility could feel guilty simply for the fact that they're allowed to now sleep or catch up with work or exercise or something, and they just feel, you know what, maybe there was more that I could have done. Maybe I should have spent more time there. Maybe I should have made all those maybes. This will help them if you can say, you are not being a burden when you need help. You don't need to feel guilty for having been a caregiver for so long and now feeling that you're just relieved. It's okay to go through those feelings. Very important thing to say to anyone who is struggling with their own grief is to say, you are not being a burden when you need help. Your feelings are valid. It's okay to be honest about how you feel. These many questions you have are understandable. There is a phase and a wave that comes in the grief process. We usually refer to waves, and that there's that one where you go into a phase of asking questions constantly because you can't find the answers you need. Nothing makes sense. There is a sense of perspective that's lost because of all the emotional turmoil. And then people need to know that it's understandable, that they might not find the answers now that they want, but that they have so many questions is not a reason for them to think that they would be rejected. And in terms of that, you could say that asking when, where, what, or how leads to more possibilities in finding peace and solutions than asking why. Asking why is not a helpful question in your grief process. It lets you spiral. It just takes you into a spiral that just doesn't bring solace and comfort. But asking questions like when, where, what, how opens up the mind for exploration. Very important one is when it is relevant, is to say it is not your fault. Remind someone that it is not their fault. If they were in an accident and they are the only survivor, they could have lost their children in that accident. It's not their fault. And ask what you can do to make someone feel better. What can I do to make you feel better? Maybe not now, maybe tomorrow you can ask it again if they have no answer. Sometimes people just need a hug. I know at the moment with the coronavirus chaos, that's a difficult one, but let's leave that to the context of your situation. Sometimes people need you to sit with them. Just make a cup of tea and just be there. Not to talk. There's the time for that as well. And then the last 3 points, you could say, remind the person it takes courage to admit you need help. So thank you for being honest and reaching out so that I can help you. I've been wanting to help you for a while. I saw that it was difficult for you to reach out, but thank you for honestly asking me for my assistance, and I will be here for you. It takes courage to admit that you need help. In a situation of depression, to support someone by acknowledging that depression is real, to say that I can see you are struggling and I will support you as best I can. You're not making empty promises, you're not giving advice, you're saying, I will support you as best I can. Just believe me that I will be in this with you and for you. If someone is feeling suicidal, the only comment I would like to make on that, because the context can differ very much, you could say it takes courage to admit you are feeling suicidal. If someone phones you in that state, I will help you find the right support. And then you do that. You start Googling. And in my book, right at the end, there is a list of references for different contacts in terms of help. In South Africa, one of the main groups that we have for online help and quite a variety of helpful groups, even support groups right across the country, is SADAG, S-A-D-A-G. And the details are also right at the bottom at the end of this book. Very important to remind the person, I will not abandon or judge you. I will not abandon or judge you. And they might not even believe what you're saying, because in that moment or on that day, they could be so distraught that it just goes right over the top of their head and they don't even register it. Or they are feeling angry and distrustful, and none of it is of value. But stick to your guns and just stick to that attitude with the individual. And then just a few points on what we should avoid saying. This is really a list of the non-helpful comments. You are not the only one suffering like this. Please don't say that to someone. They are indeed right now suffering, whatever the reason may be. You need to get over it soon, because other people need you. That is not a helpful comment and should be avoided. Stop feeling sorry for yourself. It doesn't help asking all these questions. You can let people ask questions. And remember just to point out to them that the question why isn't going to lead them to answers, but the other questions are more helpful. You are depressing to be around. Now, can you imagine if someone had to say that to you, how you would feel? You could even push someone right over the edge by saying something like that. Even if you are frustrated, or even if they are stuck in their grief for a long time, there's a reason for that, that they're not moving ahead. And they do need support. And they do need perhaps to see a counselor or get some sort of therapy or facilitation of the context of where they are right now, if they are stuck. And so that they can just move through that portion and just move forward. Rather help them to get help. You could have done better. You could have avoided this. You should have. We should avoid saying that. It's easy to say to someone, stay strong, cheer up, things will get better somehow. Don't we just hear that every day? Rather be still and quiet with someone than to make those comments. Because in general, they are empty. They are not encouraging enough because they don't have substance when someone is dealing with grief. Yes, if you are battling with your finances or some other temporary thing that is an unfortunate situation. But when we deal with grief, it's better to avoid those three statements. You are selfish. Think of how much you matter to everyone who loves you. That is putting someone on a guilt trip. And it's not helping them with their grief. It's not supporting them. You could be the one, perhaps unintentionally one day, to utter a statement like this, or someone who is dealing with grief could say to you, you know what, this person just made a comment that hurt me so much, I don't know how to deal with it. And what did they say? They said, what about me? You're just thinking of yourself. Why don't you just get over this? Because I need you. What about me? And that could be said in anger, and it would be best to get to a place of calmness where there could be a more rational communication and perhaps an apology for making a statement like that. When we are grieving, we could forget about other people's needs temporarily. It's possible. And then in depression, it doesn't always help to say, I was also depressed once for a while and it became better. Good for you. I'm glad it became better. But if someone is genuinely clinically depressed, they need serious help. And even if they are on medication, there could be a day where something has happened, a reason that has put them back, and they're not coping. That's not the time to say to someone that you were depressed for a while and it became better soon. It's important to listen to them and just be like a support structure for that person with empathy. The less you say, the better. And they will also move through it and move up out of it. But they have to deal with where they are. They can't just deny it just to make everyone else feel better. And then in terms of a suicidal situation, please avoid saying to someone, suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. It's not. And it's best to avoid that statement. And the last point here is to avoid saying to someone, just because this or that issue has happened doesn't give you an excuse to take your own life. Don't reprimand people, even if you are angry with them. Help them to get help. Someone who actually has attempted suicide will attempt it again. And there could be an underlying psychological issue that needs to be diagnosed. It takes a lot to get to the point where you are not only willing, but practically engaged in taking your own life. There was a situation very recently, that I read about in our news columns about a mother who had 2 teenage daughters, and she did not include them in her desperate plan to take her own life, but she only, in the home with her 2 teenage daughters, tried to take her own life. At that point, that person was so desperate that they were not thinking rationally anymore. They were beyond any space where they could think that there was a solution, or that they had enough support to lean on to get through what they were facing. We don't gain anything in this life by judging other people. Ask me, I know. And I've also learned that the hard way. But we gain a lot, even emotionally, and we grow in empathy by being willing to just be a support, not always knowing what to say, but being willing to be available for someone. Then I'd like to just close tonight off and read you this very short and beautiful poem by Rachel Naomi Remen. It's something that's so special to me. I don't think I've ever read anything that captures a silent support this way, and I also want to just read it to you. Perhaps the most important thing we bring to another person is the silence in us. Not the sort of silence that is filled with unspoken criticism or hard withdrawal. The sort of silence that is a place of refuge, of rest, of acceptance of someone as they are. We are all hungry for this other silence, and it is hard to find. In its presence we can remember something beyond the moment, a strength on which to build a life. Silence is a place of great power and healing. Now with that, I'd like to just close off, and I'm going to end this recording, and I'll be sharing it on the page. And I want to just remind you that this is a bi-monthly free group support session, and if you'd like to join us, we will be on 2 weeks from now, and I will be posting the events so that it's visible and the reminders are out there. But in the meantime, when you do stumble across this, you're welcome to download the book from my website. It's www.risegrowlead.co.za, and you have to navigate to the Giving Back tab, and there you will find the Grief and Trauma Support page, and it's part of my community service. If you are not happy with a group in terms of your own grief support needs, and you want to have a private therapy session or facilitation or a debriefing, then you are most welcome to email me or WhatsApp me and book a session. There is more detail about those services on the Services tab down below on the Facebook page. But you're welcome to get into contact with me, and also your first session is always a free assessment so that we can see what you need and what your journey entails. I hope that this has been a helpful evening for you, and please share the recording with anyone who you know needs it, and refer them to the free material that they can download. Thank you, and God bless.